What is up, guys, and welcome back to Flow State. It is episode 46, I believe, and I have to start with a quick apology. For any regular listeners, you'll know that we have been very much quiet or non-existent over the past few weeks, and the reason for that is just Adam and I are both going through really busy times for similar reasons. So obviously work for both of us is pretty chaotic. For me, my work is full-time, never changes, and the kids obviously keep me nice and busy, whereas for Adam, he's going into peak marathon season and his coaching business is obviously thriving, which is great, but it means less time for things like the podcast for both of us. So it has been put on the back burner, so I do apologize for that. But now with daylight savings and the slight changes in both kind of UK and Australian time zones and the differences between them, hopefully we'll get some more duo episodes coming for you over the next few weeks. But in the meantime, I had some spare time this afternoon after finishing work, and I thought I'd jump on, answer some questions, maybe give you a bit of a personal update with my training and how things have been going, and we can see if we can get like a half an hour, 40 minute episode to keep you guys busy and hopefully give you something to take away from it. Like, I think it's great me giving you just a lowdown of my training, but I want actually something that you can kind of take with you, some training tips. So I've got some questions lined up in the back. But to start off with, so what have I been up to? Well, for anyone playing along out there, I've been doing heaps of cycling over the past few months, and I've been kind of just maintaining training. Like, realistically, this is the first time, I guess, the first extended period of time where I haven't been training for anything specifically. Obviously, throughout last year, I was either training for races in the first half of the year, then I was dealing with injury, and the plan really became to just stay fit and hopefully get back, which obviously didn't quite happen. So this year, I guess or even end of last year going into this year, my main plan was to just get fitter on the bike, which I believe I have done, and I really had the opportunity to test myself probably it was about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago now. I was invited up with some of the Rafa guys, Rafa being a cycling club and apparel shop, and they have a clubhouse in Melbourne, and I was invited up to do one of their mountain rides. So it was basically about 80k. It was about 2,000 meters of elevation. That was a really, really good ride. There was some guys that were faster than me and fitter than me. There was some that weren't, but either way, I had the opportunity to kind of test myself and see how I got on over a 4.5 hour ride, which I was really happy with. And since then, and this is where I'm going to give you some advice and something you can take away. But since then, I think I underestimated, firstly, how impactful that ride would be in terms of how much it would actually take out of me, because realistically, it was a tough ride. I spent as part of a 4.5 hour ride, obviously that was elapsed time, so there were some rests in there. But I spent a lot of time in what would have been my zone 5 for running. Like, if my zone 2 is anywhere from like 115 to 130 ish, and where I was doing a lot of my LT1 work when I was running was sitting around the 160 mark. I spent a lot of this ride like well above 160, so I'm talking like 170 plus for a big chunk of that ride, and it would have been the equivalent of what was a marathon in the end. And I think I maybe didn't give myself enough of an opportunity to rest and recover afterwards. Like, I did take a couple of days of easy riding, but then I think on that Tuesday, so I did the ride on a Saturday, I did an easy recovery spin on the Sunday, so even that was 45 minutes, zone 1, and then I did some normal resistance training on the Monday, and then I was back to almost normal on the Tuesday, and I felt okay. But in hindsight, I maybe should have just taken a complete deload for that week, because and this is something that I was talking to clients about, and something that I think is really important when you're kind of all in to your training, because I think the problem is with a lot of us endurance athletes and people that love running, cycling, gym, swimming, whatever it is we do go all in, right? So we found something new, we found something we're good at, and we dedicate everything into that thing. We live, eat, sleep, breathe it. And that is what has been my problem typically in the past, and was the same this time. Like, I had a great ride and I was just like, when can I get back out, right? When can I go and do it again? And I think I rushed back into it, and I just found that I think that was the start of a period where fatigue was building up quicker than I was bringing it back down again. And a few weeks passed. I did another couple of big rides, outdoor rides, and to be honest, it's probably good I didn't do more, because obviously the weather's turning here in Australia. We're going into winter now, so the weather is a bit shit on occasion, and there was some times where I didn't have the opportunity to go out. But even still, I was hammering it pretty hard. And then I think it was about 2 weeks ago, I started to notice that my drive, my motivation to train was starting to not just decrease, it was starting to plummet. Whereas before, at worst, it'd be like, oh, this is going to be a tough session, and I'm a little bit anxious about it. Whereas this time around, I was like, I'm just dreading training. Even like those zone 2 rides or runs where I'm doing like 10K real easy, it was just like, it was dread, frankly. And I don't think that's a good way to be. Like, don't get me wrong, I think there are times when all of us are going to have rides, runs, training sessions, easy and hard, where you're not feeling it and you're just not 100%. But when it's every time you train, I think that's a bit of a red flag that something's been overcooked, whether it's you're not giving yourself enough time to recover from bigger sessions, or you're doing too much volume as a whole. I think that's a really important thing to note. And yeah, when we talk about this is just for coaching in general, deloads are a really kind of interesting topic, because I come from a lifting background. I still am a personal trainer. That's my bread and butter. And there was a point where deloads were very much a proactive thing. So you do 6 weeks of training, then you'd program a deload, a 1 week or 5-day deload, and then you get back to training, and you're kind of putting that deload in whether you need it or not. And what's happened is, whereas before that was meant to be like the productive way to approach training, whereas since then it's kind of been almost frowned upon, because at the end of the day, most gen pop people, most people that work a sedentary job, maybe don't have kids, life is a bit of a deload, frankly. Yes, I appreciate there's some psychological stress there, but most people are probably averaging 4,000 to 6,000 steps a day, sitting on their arse all day, and training is a good thing. And for these people, like, you could argue whether a deload is needed or not, but unfortunately, those personalities, such as myself, like, realistically, I do like at least 10,000 steps a day. I work on my feet all day. I lift weights for a living, pretty much, and I do a lot. And I have kids, and I still love my training. Like, whether or not I'm motivated to do it, I love being able to train and move my body. And what happens is you do end up overdoing it, and without realizing it, or by the time you're realizing it, you're already in too deep. And so, like, just deloads were not something I was doing, coming back to the point. And I think there's maybe something to be said for potentially as a training, if you're someone that manages your own training, is actually being a little bit more kind of, instead of being reactive with deloads and waiting until it's too late, it's actually being like proactive and going, okay, well, for every 6 weeks of hard training, I'm going to take a down week. And I know this is something that a lot of cycling coaches do, just because, like, cumulative volume ends up being really high. You spend like 10 plus hours on a bike each week, and it's like, what's the worst that's going to happen if you take a deload? Is, like, you're not going to regress. You're probably just going to maintain at the very worst and then free up some space to recover. So I guess the takeaway here is something that I'm going to look at implementing, is that more structured approach to training, where it's like, I'm going to start planning my weeks in advance instead of just going week by week and doing whatever, because it is a bit of a slippery slope, is you just do more and more and more and you push harder and harder and harder, is now, okay, I'm going to mark it in my calendar that every 4 to 6 weeks, I'm going to dial it back. And instead of doing my usual difficult, like challenging sessions, my workouts, maybe I'll program a week where I do slightly more zone 2, or I just do less volume. I think that's something to really watch out for. So there obviously can be a lot of reasons why motivation drops, but I think if you're someone that has a tendency to overdo it and really go all in on something, I think it's important to be able to be really critical, like critically analyze yourself and go, okay, like, is this a case of I'm not eating enough? Am I kind of stressed with work, or am I just simply like drilling myself into the ground? Which is what has happened in my instance. And spoiler alert, this time last week, I basically came down with a cold, and I think it was something that was brewing, and I think it was definitely something that was not necessarily avoidable, but maybe made worse by the fact that I was overcooking training. So yeah, that can be another telltale sign, is you feel it building. You really do. There was some days there last week where I was like, I'm pushing here, but I feel like it's just taking more of a toll. And then last weekend, Easter weekend, man, it gets you. You wind down, you have that, you think to yourself, man, I've got a 4-day weekend coming up here. You get to Friday, you're like, I'm here, I'm relaxed. And by Saturday afternoon, it's game over pretty much. And that's what happened with me. So, the take home is I overcooked it with my training. I wasn't managing my workload well enough, which is something that can happen when you don't have a goal in mind. Is in my instance, you push too hard without any real reason, and it adds up, and then you get sick and you lose motivation. And yeah, I did have I'm on the back end of it. I'm not 100%, I'm pretty close, and I've basically just gone, okay, well, I did some very light exercise last weekend and coming into the week, and I've basically been doing a lot of zone 2 this week, like no intensity, and I'll reassess over the weekend if I can get out on the road. But that has been what is happening with me. And as for plans with training going forward, I'd still like to get into some crit racing when the season kind of kicks up again in maybe October. But in the meantime, I think I'll try and get out for some bigger rides where I can over winter and slowly build up a little bit of strength. I've kind of realized that my sticking point, or where my shortcoming on the bike, is definitely my torque, my ability to push power, because I'm obviously very light for someone who's 6 foot. I kind of hover around the mid to low 60s. So at the moment, I reckon I'm probably 64, but some weeks I can be as low as 63. And as a result of that, I can push pretty. I'm pretty good with like a diesel engine perspective. Like once I get going, I can push pretty hard for quite a long time at a relatively high wattage. But when it comes to putting out high kind of bursts of power, I'm not so great. So maybe that's something I'll work on. I'll do some torque training, more explosive work, and yeah, just pay attention to that. But otherwise, like I can't really deny that it's hard not to just go, well, look, my strength here is my ability to work over longer time frames, and do I just kind of keep milking that? But then when you're in a real world environment and have to go up like a sharp climb, like you need to be able to push through that at a low gear. And so I think it's important to train for that. So I might pepper in a little bit of that and like plan out a couple of months of training, so I'm not overcooking it. Like I said, like I don't want to do too much damage in terms of muscular damage. So yeah, that's something to work on, and that's my training at the moment. But I think that is plenty of me. And now I had some questions that I compiled and I thought might be worth answering to give you guys a little bit of value again, because that is what we're here to do primarily. So, and again, I don't want to make them just running related as much as a lot of you guys love the running content. I'm just going to make it applicable to all sports. So firstly, I feel guilty taking rest days. Am I actually losing fitness when I don't train. So I'm gonna tell you this for a fact. I think you've just probably got this from my big monologue. Is a lot of us feel guilty taking rest days because it's we enjoy what we do, and a rest day feels like an opportunity lost when it comes to being out on the road or on the pavement or in the gym, frankly. But do you actually lose fitness when you don't train? The short answer is absolutely fucking not. If it's one day, one weekend, even a week, you will not lose any fitness, right? So in the short term, what is happening when you don't train? Well, your body has the ability to actually do any repair, any growth and repair. Like a lot of this happens overnight when you sleep. That's when the most part of your recovery is done. And that's, again, why we kind of really emphasize sleep. But when you take an actual rest day, the body isn't worried about repairing or using calories or energy that's taken in to kind of restore. And it goes, okay, well, I'm not doing anything today. Let's fully kind of bring the nervous system down a little bit. Let's apply all these resources to that rest and recovery and really relax here, which is what happens. So it's not just a physical thing, it is happening to the nervous system as well. Sorry, I should say it's not just a muscular thing, but your body is kind of repairing or giving the nervous system a chance to wind down, and you're kind of moving out of that stress state, that sympathetic state, and moving into the parasympathetic state, the rest and digest mode, so to speak. So one day is absolutely not going to detrain you, and neither is a weekend or even a few days. Where it gets a bit hairy is like, or where it starts to detraining starts to happen is after about a week. And again, you don't lose fitness, you just lose the ability to kind of access top end speed or strength. The body basically just becomes, it loses that edge, is the way I'd put it to you. It's not like you've got weaker or you've got slower. It's just the ability to tap into that is lessened. And that's why, like, even when you're deloading or tapering for a marathon, like a good taper will include some strides, right? Because you're still accessing that top end. You're still kind of reminding the body that this is how you do a sprint effort. As opposed to like doing nothing, that's where you'd likely lose it. Your zone 2 or even your kind of in your longer endurance stuff, you're probably not going to like miss anything after a week of not training. You might just feel a little bit kind of, you physically feel like you've lost that edge, and that's just where you haven't done anything. But yeah, more than 7 days is where you'd probably want to go, okay, I want to keep in some kind of short bursts if I can, but again, you don't lose it, you just lose the edge. From the research, where you'll start to actually lose strength and potentially even muscle mass is 3 weeks or longer of not doing, like, of minimal movement, right? So it's all on a spectrum. It's not like you hit 3 weeks of not training and then you suddenly lose it. It's like, no, it's like, well, if you're relatively active during that time, you'll probably lose less. Whereas if you're like bedridden, yes, after 3 weeks, you'll start to atrophy, and you'll absolutely start losing strength and speed, whatever it is. But let's say you've got a 3-week holiday and you're really active during that time, doing heaps of steps, you may be doing some like hiking or swimming. You still won't lose much, but yeah, much beyond that, you're more at risk. So the long story short, you don't need to feel guilty to take rest days, right? And if you need them, like, take them, because as you've learned from me, like, adding an extra rest day in there gives your body a chance to recover. And more importantly, like, the way I frame it to myself is taking this rest day is going to mean I can train better tomorrow, and I'm going to enjoy it more because I've had that rest. You're going to be chomping at the bit to go and train. So that is what I would say to that one. What's another good one? Oh, I love this question. So why do I feel amazing on one run and terrible the next with no obvious reason? This happened to me all the flipping time, and I think it's important to go to actually like look under the hood or double click and go, Well, there's no obvious reason, but it doesn't mean there's no reason, right? So it's probably easier to say it in easy runs, right? Because sessions for the most part are going to feel how they always feel, and if they don't, I definitely say there's something happening in the background, as in like you haven't eaten enough or you haven't slept well the night before. But for me, what I used to find on those big sessions is that once you get up to speed, once you get through the first few intervals, you kind of just you get into it and you feel how you normally feel, right? Even if you've had a bad sleep, once you're kind of halfway through an LT1 session or an LT2 session or a long run, you kind of just feel fine because you've got that adrenaline pumping through your system. You might have a little bit of a runner's high and you feel great. Whereas for me, I noticed it more on the easy runs where you're less likely to be kind of full of that those endorphins, like I was saying, and you're more likely to feel terrible. At least I definitely did. And the reasons why one might feel great whereas the next might not be, again, there's so much to it. It could be that it's been a big week of volume in training, and it could have built up. Like, where is that run positioned in the week? If you're doing a run right at the end of the week, once you've had, I don't know, 80, 90, 100 Ks of volume, obviously fatigue is going to build up prior to your rest days, and it could be that runs on the back of that week feel crap. So I definitely look at trends and patterns in your training. So ask yourself, like, okay, is this happening semi-regularly? Is it always towards the end of the week I feel crap? What else have you got on outside of training? Like, has it been a big week of work? Are you dealing with stuff at home? Bad sleep is a really obvious one. Food is another obvious one, and that's not even just food on the day. It's like, okay, what was I eating yesterday? Did I miss a meal? Did I have less carbs? All of the above can have a reason and make a difference, like literally one day to the next. Like, let's say you have a long run on a Wednesday long run, for instance, and you feel great. You smash that run, you feel really good. Next day you feel really flat. Well, okay, it could be that the long run itself has drained you, or it could just be you didn't eat enough, and you might have just been eating what you normally eat. But could a gel kind of on the back half of that run have allowed you to kind of get a head start on the recovery process? Well, potentially. So it all comes down to like troubleshooting and going, okay, are there any trends and patterns here? But I think realistically the big ones are, like, is it as a result of training volume or intensity? Have you added more in that week? Are you stressed? Has there been more stress in the week? Is it sleep or is it food? Outside of that, it could be you're coming down with something like sickness. As most people know, you don't just get sick, you kind of feel it brewing, or you see the signs before you've actually got sick. Like, there's days where you're just like, I just don't have an edge, I don't have symptoms, but I just don't feel myself. For me, that's always the first thing I notice. So yeah, that's what I'd say. Um, Outside of that, like, sometimes the body is really complex and there's not any rhyme or reason to it. It's just, yeah, stuff that happens, really. Cool. What's the next question I should answer? How do I know if I'm pushing myself enough or just being lazy? Well, I don't think it's like when it comes to pushing yourself enough. I think the thing to remember first off is it's absolutely, when it comes to endurance sports, for the most part, unless you're an elite or you really have like big goals, I don't think it's more likely that you're overcooking it than undercooking it, right? For most people, simply just training is going to allow you to adapt, and yeah, it's very hard to underdo it. That being said, if you're like intermediate or have like actual kind of race targets, I would say, like, what the way to look at it is, what is the goal of the training you're doing? Like, if you're running for marathon goals, race goals, or riding for certain goals or whatever, you got to be thinking, what is the aim of this session? Okay. If you're simply at the point where your coach or whatever, wherever you're getting your programming is just assigning runs, generic runs, I don't think it's possible to undercook it, right? As me and Adam always say, just like that, doing that zone 2 work is going to allow you to adapt because you're likely a beginner, and simply like getting out there and doing the thing that is running, swimming, cycling, whatever it is going to act as a stimulus, and you're going to adapt, right? So I think if there's a day, especially where you're not feeling great or you just don't have energy, it's not really possible to undercook it. So just go out and do what you can. However, like if you have actual sessions and targets, and you're working more towards like rate of perceived exertion or RPE, like how do you know if you're being lazy? Well, I'd be looking at things like your pace or your heart rate. That's where that stuff becomes really beneficial, because it's like, well, if normally your goal is to push it, like I like programming a lot of my kind of early intermediate or late beginners with RPE, because it allows you to think about how hard you're pushing, right? And if I've asked someone to push at a 7 or 8 RPE, how do you know if you're pushing yourself enough? Well, it's like, I think it's a case of like, how do you feel when it's hard, like, because in the moment, like it is tough. But I always look at it like, if I've asked someone to push it at 7 or 8, for instance, and you finish all the reps, because I'd only ever ask that specifically for interval sessions, because if I'm getting someone to do just like an easy or absorption run, it's always going to be a 4 or 5 out of 10 like conversation pace, whereas for the sessions, I think as things like a 7 or 8 out of 10, which most of these intervals are, typically should be, okay, how do you feel when you finish? Do you feel like you could have continued a bit longer? Or once you finish the session, do you feel like you would have been able to do an extra couple of reps of whatever distance? And if the answer is, yeah, maybe I could do 2 more, right, before like I really start to feel that fatigue build up, I think that's a good place to be. How do you know if you're undercooking those kind of sessions? Well, it's like, again, if they feel like drastically different to what you'd normally do, or they feel like how they are on your easy sessions and your data reflects that. So if you're running at kind of easy pace for what is meant to be 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10, I think you might be undercooking it a little bit, and there might be like a kind of a need to not a need, but it might be a good idea to try and push it forward a little bit, maybe get up to the point where your kind of heart rate comes up and you're a little bit, you're more out of breath, like for intervals, for instance. You probably wouldn't want to be able to hold a conversation. It should be closer to, okay, I can only give 1-word answers, but I can still think here. I can comprehend a podcast, for instance, right? So for a lot of my LT1 work when I was marathon training, if it was things like 6 by a mile or 5 by 2K, I'd be able to put a podcast in and take in the information, but I wouldn't necessarily be able to have a conversation. That's probably a good intensity. Whereas for my 800-meter intervals or kilometer intervals, music is fine. Like if I put in a podcast, I'd probably be ducking in or out. That's probably a good intensity to be at. Anything quicker, like 400s, you shouldn't be able to have a podcast in and like really absorb it. You're probably not working hard enough. That's what I'd say. But again, there's a lot to it, and I'd definitely take in look at it as though that it's definitely like more likely that you're kind of overcooking it than undercooking it for most kind of beginners or early intermediates. Okay. Last question. How do you say consistent? No, I can do better than that. You know what? Let's do a food one. Should I eat before every run, even short ones? So the short answer is no. You probably don't have to eat before every run, but context does matter, right? Like the way I'd look at it is, firstly, look, what time of day are you training? Okay, so what time of day are you training, and what kind of run is it? Those are the two main things you're going to look at. So if you are like me and enjoy a morning session, I'd frame it as, what kind of session is it first and foremost? So if I am doing an easy session like a zone 2 run or a zone 2 ride, I'm pretty confident I can go into that fasted to a degree, right? So I know I'm able to do probably like 90 minutes, probably closer to 75 minutes on a bike at zone 1, zone 2, without needing to eat before I feel the hunger kick in and I can feel that, okay, I'm getting depleted here, I need something. And for running, it's probably the equivalent of an easy run at about kind of 45 to 50 minutes. That's probably the limit for me, and I think the research probably backs that up. And after that point, you probably need some food in you, some carbs in you, and yeah, coffee helps get through it mentally, but coffee's not giving you much outside of that because it takes an hour to kick in. And this is talking about right after waking up. Like if you were to have a coffee an hour before, that's fine. But if you're fasted, again, the longer you leave it between waking up and not eating, the more you're going to need to eat, right? Because you're using energy. Even if you're only just sitting there, you're using more energy. If it's early morning and you're going into a session, again, you could probably get away with it, but the quality of that session, is it going to be better if you have some carbs in you, either right at the start or during, or maybe after your warm up? Like almost certainly yes, right? So if you're like me and some days you need to train after, like pretty soon after waking up, what I'd say is just like, it's going to be pretty hard to stomach anything heavy. So I'd say wake up, maybe start your warm up and have a gel on you so that before you go into the actual efforts, you can do that. Or you might want a carb drink, if you can stomach that and it doesn't make you need to go to the toilet. Or if you have maybe an hour, 2 hours prior to training, like that's where I'd go, and it's a session or a long run, I'd be like, yeah, try and have something light, maybe an hour to half an hour before. You probably want some kind of fast acting carbs, like rice cake with honey is a great one. Gels, dates. I've been like chomping down dates like there's no tomorrow. They're a lot cheaper than gels, so you won't break the bank, and they're delicious. And anything longer than that, you could probably get away with a full meal, right? So if it's a race, for instance, or a long ride for me, my protocol is to have some breakfast about 3 hours before, and that would be where you can introduce more slow carbs, so things like oats. You might have toast with banana, more fruits in there. You get away with it because you've got longer to digest it, whereas I wouldn't necessarily say go chomping down a load of kind of fiber or low GI carbs like right before you head out, because it just might sit a little bit heavy. So that's my protocol for morning training. The later in the day it gets, like naturally you're probably more likely to have meals in your system anyway, and that takes away from the need to have carbs immediately before. But for me, again, if it's a big session like what I did today, I had just had a longer zone 2 session. I didn't really feel up for any intervals on the bike, and I had breakfast probably around 9 o'clock. And then I was jumping on the bike at around 12. I just had some dates and some dried figs before I got on the bike. That was fine. And that's just going to allow me to not need to eat while I'm on the bike or out on a run, for instance. So yeah, just be strategic. Like you're same with intensity. You're more likely to undereat than you are to overeat if you're doing like long sessions. So I'd say just play it safe and have something small. Have like a 100 calories or 25 grams of carbs before or like after your warm up, and then maybe have something else on hand. Like if you need carbs, you'll know about it, because you'll feel like, for me, what would happen is if I was doing like I love using my old treadmill LT1 sessions as reference, because they were really easy to monitor. But yeah, I keep an eye on intensity. Do you feel like your heart rate is shooting up? Do you feel like relative intensity is shooting up? And if it is, like, that's where you're probably in need of some carbs. And how's recovery? Like, are you starving hungry the moment you get off? If you are, you probably could have done with eating a little bit more. Whereas even if you're just having gels on this kind of sessions, if you're having a few, like, you'll jump off the bike or finish your run going, I'm actually okay here. Like, I can manage for a couple of hours, and that's because your body's like, it's already started that replenishing. Either way you choose, it's already started that process, and you're less likely to need it immediately afterwards. So yeah, so short answer is you don't need carbs, but I think it's very much context dependent. And in worst case scenario, if in doubt, just have some carbs. It's not going to hurt. There's not really much benefit to not carbing up. Like, yes, you might use more fat for fuel, but as an adaptation, that's not what's driving it. The adaptation comes from doing the training and spending more time in those training zones, as opposed to being fasted, right? Because yes, we want fat oxidation, we want fat to be used for fuel, but when it actually happens, that's not what's driving the adaptation. It's training, and it's teaching the mitochondria to spend time in certain training zones. So yeah, look, I think I'll leave it there. I know it's a short episode. I don't have all the time in the world today, I'm afraid, but hopefully you did get some benefits or get some value out of the podcast today. And like I said, Adam and I will do our best to get back to your screens together very soon. But yeah, in the meantime, thank you for listening. Please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and rate our podcast. And if you have any questions, send them through. But otherwise, I'm looking forward to checking in with you guys again soon.